Hello, my friends. I got a 6 hour car drive ahead of me, so I figured that I would record a little video uh, while I'm just cruising along on the interstate. Um, One of the things that I wanted to talk about today was the coming persecution and how I think that that's going to transpire. And um, I think that it's very important for us to learn from the past here. And what I mean from that is the persecution that's happened to the house of Israel already. And we need to look no further than what happened to the Jews during World War II. Now, for all intents and purposes, in the eyes of Hitler, there was no difference between the Jews and the house of Israel. Most people consider them to be the same. That's, out of ignorance, because the other tribes have been missing in action for thousands of years. So that's why they equate the Jews with the house of Israel. But it's important to understand what happened to the house of Israel during World War II, because I think something very similar is in the works right now. And let me explain myself. So, in order to explain this, I need to first explain my perception of what happened to the Jews during World War II and why. So, we all know that Hitler murdered 6 million Jews during World War II. The question is why? Why did he do it? So, Hitler had this grand idea of bringing in a German Reich that would last for 1,000 years. And he wanted to motivate the people. Now, when Hitler rose to power, the average German was in dire straits because of the sanctions and consequences that they were dealing with as a result of World War I. So Hitler was able to flip the script and convince the everyday German that their problems were not the result of the actions of their fathers, but rather were the result and consequence of the financial powers that be in Europe. And in Europe, it just so happens that the largest banking institutions were controlled by families that could trace their genealogy to the House of Israel. They were Jewish. And so Hitler used the financial institutions because, let's face it, it's very hard to implement sanctions unless you can control the financial impact of all sides of this. And the Jews were in control of the financial systems in Europe at the time. So Hitler was able to paint the Jewish people with a very broad brush as the oppressors of the Germans, because of the financial institutions of the day. Now, of course, this was very unfair. This wasn't the financial institutions' fault. It was the Germans' fault for declaring war on all of Europe and wreaking such havoc. But the key point here is that Hitler was able to divorce reality from public perception and create an alternate reality and get everyone to buy into it. In essence, he flipped the script. Now, this is terrifying that he was able to do that, and he did it through public discourse. He was a very effective orator, and the use of propaganda. And this is so unnerving to me because I see the same things happening today. Today we have our our leaders, and I'm not pointing to any specific individual, because this narrative is not promoted by individuals. It's promoted by the Whore of Babylon. Now, Satan was behind the agenda in World War II, and he's behind the agenda of the Whore of Babylon today. So we're starting to hear of the dangers of violent domestic terrorists. And I mean, Hitler painted the Jews in the same light. They were the oppressors. They were ideologically flawed. They were the domestic terrorists of their day, according to Hitler. Now, Hitler defined the narrative in World War II, and today, the voices that are promoting this concept of domestic terrorists are, concerned not with actual domestic terrorists like Antifa, who destroys personal property and, beats people up because of, their political affiliations, intimidates people and so forth. They're not talking about Antifa. They're talking about people that don't agree with their agenda. These people who maintain traditional Judeo-Christian values, they are the domestic political terrorists that are being targeted here. And so the script is being flipped again in our day. And it's something that is boggling my mind. The scriptures teach us that in the last days, right will be wrong and wrong will be right, and up is down, black is white, righteousness is unrighteousness, and wickedness is righteousness. So this is the script being flipped. So how is this going to happen? It's going to happen by the narrative of domestic terrorism from an ideological perspective, meaning people that do not who have religious beliefs that do not go along with the political correct narrative of all-inclusiveness. That is the enemy, and that enemy needs to be stamped out, eliminated, because they're promoting violence, ideological violence against the masses, against humanity. If you believe in the original concepts of the American dream, that is a constitutional-based government that enables the people to have power and not the government, then you are now some radical ideological terrorist group. This is what is coming. So it's something that we need to be prepared for, because as the flipping of this script becomes complete, which is, it is going to be realized in months, not years. So when this happens and you espouse the wrong ideology, then you will be the enemy. Anyone who did not espouse Hitler's philosophies was bound for the concentration camps because they were enemies to the state, disturbers of the peace, domestic terrorists. So I'm very concerned when I see people not question the philosophies of, the talking heads, not thinking for themselves. I have had people reach out to me and tell me, listen, I can't read your books because you are it's apparent that from the prophecy of Ezra's eagle that you are a fascist. Ezra's eagle is not a political prophecy. It has nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. And if you buy into that, then people wonder, how is it that normal, regular, run-of-the-mill Germans could turn on their neighbors and commit such atrocities? It's because they were boiled slowly like frogs in a pot. And they were not awake to what was happening around them, and they bought into the narrative. People are buying into this narrative today. Well, this is a terrifying mindset that it's possible to demonize an entire population based off of whatever narrative whoever's controlling the informational source wants to give you. Hitler controlled the information source, and as a result, the people that bought into it, that information was everywhere. It was coming from every news channel that they watched. All their newspapers told them the same stories. Is it any different today? Almost every major news channel today is controlled by similar forces. If you look at the ownership structure of the media today, it's amazing. It's like a handful of companies own every single news network in the country. Think of it this way: if the kingmen that in the Book of Mormon that took over the government in Zarahemla, they controlled the narrative, right? They kicked Pahoran out. And so now you have Captain Moroni, who's coming in to liberate the people from the kingmen. What was the narrative that the kingmen were telling the people? Was Captain Moroni an influence for righteousness? Or would he have been painted as a fascist, out of control general that's seeking to impose his will upon, the people by force? Obviously, that is what the kingmen would have been putting in the minds of the Nephites. So it's frustrating and concerning to see those same things happening today, and whoever controls the narrative controls the hearts and minds of the people. Unless you can divorce yourself from, the talking heads and discover what is true for yourself. What hope did the average German have of understanding what the actual truth was when all of their newspapers, when all of the political dialogue, when the books that they were receiving, certain books were being burned. These same things are happening today. It's just happening from a more advanced technological perspective. People that have ideas that are different from the narrative that the Whore of Babylon is putting upon us get deplatformed. Instead of burning books, we have search engine algorithms that limit access to certain information. It is the same thing. It's happening all around us, and we need to wake up that this is happening to us. If we don't, we're doomed. Think about this. Jesus Christ, the God of Israel, came to the Jews. Now, the Jews were led by prophets. But when Christ came, the vast majority of the Jews did not believe him. They did not become Christians. And it was because of the people that controlled the narrative in their day. So this is vital, that the informational sources that we choose to listen to are accurate and righteous. And the only way to be able to discern that, because there are so many crazy, voices out there, on the right and on the left. There really are conspiracy theories that I believe are intentionally crafted to be able to make it so that you can dismiss entire arguments by associating it with a conspiratorial class of thinking. It's ingenious the way that the Whore of Babylon is going about this. Satan is a genius. He is not some half-witted hack. He knows how to do this. So if we are not awake, then we will be led astray. And we will subscribe to the philosophy that the Whore of Babylon wants us to subscribe to. This is the great and spacious building. So this is how persecution is going to happen. And the Jews were persecuted by Germans who thought that they were doing the right thing, because they were getting all kinds of virtue signaling from the powers that be. So what do the accolades of men, what does the approval of men, the philosophies of men, what does that matter? There is such a draw to that. The pull of the great and spacious building is so powerful. People would go and partake of the fruit, and then they would hear those voices from the great and spacious building, and they would jump ship. That's happening. That's happening all around us today. And the thing that is most alarming to me is how such a large portion of the population doesn't see it. And I'm talking the Christian community, the people that should know better, the people that are members of the house of Israel. They're not seeing this, and it puts everyone at risk. And ultimately, as this is solidified, this mindset is solidified, and the flipping of this script becomes mainstream thought, which is already mainstream thought in academia, in most of the mainstream media informational sources. It just hasn't become mainstream in every household, but many households, yes, it is. And I have heard, and this is atrocious way of thinking. This is a Nazi-like way of thinking, and I have heard it so many times that, I can't be a friend. I can't even associate with somebody who voted for President Trump. What an idiotic way of thinking. That you hate somebody because of how they voted, because their way of thinking is different from your way of thinking. What in the world? That terrifies me, because that's how the Nazis were able to do what they did, because people became so blindly loyal to that philosophy, and once you have invested in it, you're all in. Think about it from a historical perspective. It's harder to think about these things with regards to current events, because this election has been something else, and people's nerves are so raw. So try to pull back from this current event and look at what has happened so many times before, whether it was the Jews in World War II or Christ coming to the Jews, in the meridian of time, or what happened when the Whore of Babylon obtained control over the script amongst the Nephites in the days of the Book of Mormon and the Jaredites. And we have numerous examples of how this transpired. So this is one of the reasons that I believe President Nelson says, hey, you're not going to be able to survive the coming days unless you have the constant guiding influence of the Holy Ghost to be with you, because otherwise you're going to buy into this. And you're going to go down a path that puts you in direct opposition with Jesus Christ. Remember when Jesus Christ came to America and there was such tremendous destruction, he told the people, the reason why you weren't destroyed is because you didn't stone and kill the prophets. You didn't cast out the righteous from among you. You didn't buy into this false narrative, because we are the Germans today, and we are being faced with the choice of whether or not we are going to persecute the Jews. Each and every one of us needs to decide for ourselves whether we are going to have eyes to see or if we're going to go along with the narrative of the Whore of Babylon. And, that is frightening. And one more point that I would like to make here is the Lord wants us to make this decision for ourselves. He doesn't want the leaders of the church to come out and tell us what thought process we should be subscribing to. Just like he, didn't call an Isaiah to tell all of the people at the time Jesus Christ was ministering, hey, this is Christ, you need to follow him. Each individual needed to determine what the truth was on their own. Every single household needed to receive the information that was being provided to them and choose what information they were going to act upon. And that is the same thing that is happening to us. We should not expect the leaders of the church to make these decisions for us. We should not outsource this to anybody else. We are responsible for our own spiritual journey, for the choices that we make. And we are responsible to have the guiding influence of the Holy Ghost in our lives. And if we don't, we have nobody that we can point the finger to except for ourselves. That is the way that the Lord wanted this to work. It is working that way. So it makes it very important for each and every one of us to be on the right side of this. And I guarantee you, the right side of this is not vilifying and persecuting an individual group for some sort of new morality that is being introduced, that somehow supersedes traditional Judeo-Christian values. So I hope that this video has been helpful to you. Like I said earlier, you don't have to agree with this. I just want you to think about it and come to your own conclusion about it, because this is real. We are in the last days, and it's happening. It's happening right now. So thanks for listening, my friends, and until next time, God bless.